Here's Brody Brazil.
So obviously I'm very aware of the situation and the narrative and the conversation surrounding the Vegas Golden Knights and what they've been doing again this season, kind of utilizing the LTIR, the long-term injured reserve, to kind of circumvent the salary cap. They've got these players that are hurt. They miss the entire rest of the regular season. And then, just like Mark Stone, he comes back and maybe is ready once again for Game 1 of the postseason that the Golden Knights are definitely going to be in. And as I've been doing some research and just what people are saying and what the situation is, I never really found an opinion that kind of exactly agreed with how I felt. And I'll be honest, I never exactly expected to see this identical opinion come from Las Vegas. You would think that I and somebody down there would disagree on this entire thing, but the folks at Sin Bin, I think they absolutely nailed this. Here's the tweet. Felt compelled to share my thoughts on the allegations of cap circumvention against VGK. For VGK fans, they aren't technically cheating. For everyone else, you are right to call BS on it. Now, I use the word shenanigans here, but everybody can have their own term to understand what's going on here. The headline on the article, which I'll link to down below from Sin Bin, and the headline says, unsavory, but not illegal. I think that is so well said. Such a great choice of words there. Unsavory, but not illegal. Regarding Golden Knights cap circumvention. Here's what the piece says. Mark Stone returned to practice 8 days before the playoffs, as he just did. Exactly the same number as last year, when he went on to play in Game 1 of the playoffs and help lead the Golden Knights to a Stanley Cup. Considering what Vegas did last season and were able to do at the deadline due to his absence, right? They had him on the LTIR. All of his salary cap space did not count. They were able to utilize that gap in salary cap space. There is no salary cap in the playoffs, by the way. Anyway, what they were able to do at the deadline last season due to his absence, it's understandable that the hockey world is quite skeptical about Stone's situation. No surprise. It feels like it's happening all over again. Much of what is being said about it is simply ignorant. I agree. Nobody's faking a spleen injury here, right? Nobody's faking that, especially those suggesting the injury was fictional. You don't miss 2 months of a season when you're perfectly well enough to play. However, that's not to say there isn't a valid gripe from those questioning the legitimacy of what the Golden Knights are doing. At the trade deadline, GM Kelly McCrimmon suggested it was, quote, impossible to know the timeline on Stone's return. On the same day, he also declared Stone out for the remainder of the regular season, or at least the next 6 weeks. Here's the catch. Here's the hook of the story. This allowed the Golden Knights to add 3 players, Anthony Mantha, Noah Hanifin, and Tomas Hertl. Those 3 alone are combined worth about $11 million in cap space. They were only able to make these acquisitions because they knew Stone would not return to play before April 18th, which gave them the freedom to use Stone's $9.5 million in cap space that was placed on LTIR. That's a heck of a trade-off to get those players for the regular season, the rest of it, and the playoffs, because again, there is no salary cap effectively in the postseason. Now, with Stone nearly back to action, it is clear there was at least a remote chance Stone's 10-week injury could have healed a few days quicker and thus allowed him to make it back in time for the regular season. However, now that they've made the additions, they cannot activate Stone from the LTIR because in the regular season, obviously, the salary cap still exists. This is the genesis of where cap circumvention allegations come into play as a possibility. While the Golden Knights never wanted Stone to get injured in the first place, once it happened, they needed the injury to be severe enough to keep him out through the remainder of the regular season to benefit from it. So that's exactly what they need to happen right now. While no one can prove Stone would have been able to play prior to the regular season ending, it is absolutely fair to ask the question considering the proximity to the end of the season. If he could play in regular season game 82 and doesn't, that would be against the NHL's rules, and the Golden Knights would be skirting the salary cap. As of right now, there's nothing to suggest that is the case, but the argument will gain credence if Stone does indeed play in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs as he did a year ago. So that's what we'll be paying attention to like literally right around the corner. In the end, the rule is written with ambiguity and allows for this situation to occur. I totally agree. Heck, the Golden Knights did the same thing last year with the same player and did something similar the year before, also including the same player, the captain Mark Stone. The NHL has opened this loophole, and despite it being fair to criticize teams exploiting it, there's no way for the league to enforce the rule as they intended it. So yes, the Golden Knights appear to have once again purposely taken advantage of it and are likely bending the rule in their favor for the third consecutive year. And yes, Mark Stone has helped them by accepting the fact that they've made moves, ruling him out for the remainder of the regular season, even when it was, quote, impossible to know if he could have made it back. And yes, it does come across as quite unsavory, dancing on top of the line between cheating and trying. But it is what it is, and there's not much anyone can do about it unless the league decides to fix the rule. Sinbin, all of you, part of that outlet and publication, I really appreciate that take, that perspective. We totally agree on this. I mean, the rules are what they are. And by the way, I'll get to my takeaways. There's kind of even more to it than just that. Yes, unsavory. This doesn't put a good taste in anybody's mouth to watch for like the third straight year. A prominent player, an expensive player, injured, and just so happens to come back for the playoffs when there is no salary cap. How is there no salary cap, like at least enforced in the postseason? I know why, because players aren't paid in the postseason, so they don't do the whole financing part of it, but they should at least keep what is intact for the regular season continuing in the playoffs. But I also want to mention, in defense of the Golden Knights here, it's rare you'll ever hear me say that, there are another, 5, 7, 9, almost 10 teams, I think, around the NHL that also used the LTIR this season to their benefit. They had a bunch of players that were out right near the deadline. They decided to add, and maybe just not so much as the Golden Knights, and maybe with not so much to gain and possibly take home like another Stanley Cup. But they're not the only ones doing this, to be totally fair about it. Now, the other part about it is nobody wanted Mark Stone to get hurt on the long term like he did. You lose your captain for, almost 2 months? To some degree, I don't think it was guaranteed that the Golden Knights were going to make the playoffs. And even when they traded for Tomas Hertl didn't even play for the first, month, I would say, that he was part of the team. So to do this effectively, you also have to know that your team is definitely going to get in the playoffs, because if you have Stone sit out all that extra time and you don't make the playoffs, you kind of self-inflicted ruining your season, basically. Again, the fact that there's no salary cap in the playoffs, I think that's what we have to fix. That is the remedy that the NHL needs to search for here. It's time for the NHL to modify this. Because you know what? I mean, if I'm any other team now next year and you fall into a similar situation, this is the exact avenue that everybody should be taking. And if everybody does this, I don't think it's going to be well received across the NHL, as this is a way to operate. So shenanigans, yes. Loopholes, yes. Taking advantage of it, yes. Totally within the rules as they're written, yes. But I think unsavory is probably the biggest takeaway that I've got from this piece and this situation. And it's true. So we'll see if Stone comes back for the playoffs. We'll see what the Golden Knights do in the second season of hockey. You've made it here, not their second season, you know what I mean, the playoffs. You made it here to the end of the video. You know I appreciate that. Thumbs up down below. That'll help me and this video and this channel. And oh, by the way, please go down there and hit that subscribe button, because you know I would definitely love to see you back here next time.